Your stress levels have been through the roof lately. Work deadlines piling up, bills you can't ignore, family pressure that never seems to end. And then one morning, you're getting dressed and notice something that stops you cold. Your jeans feel tighter around the waist. Not your arms, not your legs, just your belly. You haven't changed your diet, you're eating the same foods. Maybe you're even trying to exercise when you can find the time. But that belly fat, it just keeps growing, and nothing you do seems to stop it. Here's what most people don't know. Your belly fat cells aren't just sitting there doing nothing. They're actively responding to stress hormones in your blood, and they respond far more aggressively than fat cells anywhere else on your body. Today, I'm going to show you the biological reason why stress targets your belly specifically. This has nothing to do with willpower or discipline. It's about receptors, tiny protein structures on your fat cells that determine where your body stores fat when you're under chronic stress. If you've been stressed for months and your waistline keeps expanding despite your best efforts, this explanation will finally make sense of what's happening inside your body. Not all fat on your body behaves the same way. The fat around your belly, what researchers call visceral fat, has a completely different personality than the fat under your skin, on your arms, thighs, or hips. The difference comes down to something called glucocorticoid receptors. These are specialized protein structures on the surface of your fat cells that detect and bind to cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. Think of cortisol like a radio signal broadcasting through your bloodstream. Every fat cell in your body can pick up this signal, but visceral fat cells in your belly have the most sensitive receivers. Research from multiple institutions has shown that visceral fat has a higher density of these glucocorticoid receptors compared to subcutaneous fat, the fat just under your skin. The University of California, San Francisco conducted studies showing that abdominal fat has a relatively greater sensitivity to cortisol than peripheral fat. This isn't just a minor difference. Your belly fat is biologically programmed to respond more powerfully to stress hormones than fat stored anywhere else. This discovery explains why two people can be under the same amount of stress, but one develops belly fat while the other doesn't. It also explains why stress makes your midsection expand faster than other areas of your body. Here's a realistic scenario. You're dealing with a demanding boss, financial worries, maybe caring for aging parents. Your sleep is terrible. You feel anxious most days. Your brain recognizes this ongoing stress and signals your adrenal glands, two small organs sitting on top of your kidneys. These glands pump cortisol into your bloodstream. Now, cortisol itself isn't the villain. In short bursts, cortisol is essential. It gives you energy when you need it. It sharpens your focus during important moments. It's part of your survival system. The problem starts when stress never ends, when cortisol stays elevated day after day, week after week. That's when your fat cells start responding in ways that work against you. Cortisol travels through your blood and eventually reaches your fat tissue. Here's where the receptor density becomes critical. Your visceral fat cells, those deep in your abdomen surrounding your organs, are packed with glucocorticoid receptors. Studies suggest the concentration can be significantly higher in visceral fat compared to subcutaneous fat. When cortisol arrives, these belly fat cells bind to it immediately and efficiently. That binding triggers a cascade of changes inside the fat cell that promotes fat storage. Research published in multiple peer-reviewed journals has documented this preferential response of visceral fat to glucocorticoids. The fat around your organs is essentially hardwired to pay close attention to stress signals. When cortisol binds to those glucocorticoid receptors on your visceral fat cells, it sets off a specific sequence of events. The effects are complex, but they work to promote fat storage in two main ways. First, cortisol works with insulin to increase the expression of genes involved in fat deposition. Research from institutions studying adipose tissue biology has shown that glucocorticoids, acting together with insulin, enhance multiple steps in the process that stores fat. Second, the metabolic context matters enormously. Studies have found that the combination of chronic stress and diets high in sugar and fat creates a particularly powerful driver of visceral fat accumulation. University of California, San Francisco research demonstrated that among women under chronic stress, those consuming more highly palatable foods showed greater accumulation of abdominal fat and markers of metabolic risk. The relationship isn't simple. Cortisol's effects on fat storage depend heavily on what else is happening in your body: your insulin levels, what you're eating, how much you're moving, and your overall metabolic state. But the key point remains. Visceral fat, with its higher concentration of glucocorticoid receptors, responds more readily to cortisol than other fat depots. This preferential response is what drives the characteristic pattern of central obesity that develops with chronic stress. Why would your body store fat around your belly specifically when you're stressed? The answer takes us back thousands of years to our ancestors. For them, stress meant genuine physical threats: food scarcity, dangerous animals, tribal conflicts. In those situations, having quick access to energy could mean the difference between survival and death. Visceral fat is metabolically very active. It's located close to your liver, which is your body's central processing plant for energy. Storing fat in your abdomen meant your body could mobilize that energy rapidly when needed. This was an advantage when stress meant you needed to fight or run or go days without food. But here's the fundamental mismatch. Today's stress doesn't work that way. You're sitting at a desk worried about deadlines. You're lying awake at night anxious about money. Your cortisol spikes, but you're not burning energy through physical activity the way your ancestors did. Your body prepares for a physical emergency that never comes. The fat stores around your middle, but you never use them. And because chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated, the signal to store belly fat never stops. That visceral fat doesn't just sit there harmlessly either. It's hormonally active tissue that releases inflammatory chemicals, interferes with insulin signaling, and increases risk for metabolic disease. Research consistently links excess visceral fat with higher rates of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome. Dr. Elissa Epel at the University of California, San Francisco has conducted extensive research on stress and abdominal fat. Her studies found that women with higher cortisol responses to stress had significantly more visceral fat, even when their total body weight was similar to women with lower stress reactivity. A study published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that chronic psychological stress was directly associated with increased waist-to-hip ratio. The study examined premenopausal women and found that those with central fat distribution consistently secreted more cortisol in response to laboratory stressors compared to women who stored fat in their hips and thighs. Research from Yale University demonstrated that non-overweight women who were vulnerable to stress effects were more likely to have excess abdominal fat and higher levels of cortisol. After exposure to stressful tasks, women with greater abdominal fat felt more threatened, performed more poorly, and secreted significantly more cortisol. Multiple research groups across different institutions have documented this same pattern. Chronic stress, elevated cortisol, and preferential accumulation of visceral fat are intimately connected through the biology of glucocorticoid receptors. If you've been under significant stress for months or years and you've noticed your belly growing, you need to understand this isn't about lack of willpower. Your body is doing exactly what it's biologically programmed to do. You can follow a perfect diet and exercise consistently, but if your cortisol remains chronically elevated because of unmanaged stress, your visceral fat cells will keep responding to that hormonal signal. Those glucocorticoid receptors will continue binding cortisol and promoting fat storage around your midsection. This is why so many people say they're doing everything right but can't lose belly fat. The missing piece isn't the diet or exercise, it's stress management. Stress affects your metabolism, your appetite, your sleep, your energy levels, and directly influences where your body chooses to store fat. When you address chronic stress, you're not just improving your mental state, you're changing the hormonal environment that controls fat distribution. Stress isn't the only factor that affects belly fat. Genetics play a role in how sensitive your glucocorticoid receptors are and where your body prefers to store fat. Diet quality matters, sleep duration affects cortisol patterns, age influences fat distribution, especially after menopause for women. But for many people, chronic stress is the overlooked factor that tips everything else out of balance. It's the reason nothing else seems to work. If you're someone who's struggled with belly fat and you've been under persistent stress, whether from work, relationships, finances, or health concerns, stress management may be the missing link you've been looking for. You cannot eliminate stress from your life completely. Nobody can. But you can change how your body responds to stress. And over time, that can lower cortisol levels and reduce the constant signal your visceral fat cells are receiving. Sleep is foundational. Poor sleep directly raises cortisol. Studies demonstrate that even one night of inadequate sleep can spike cortisol levels the following day. Consistently getting 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep helps control your stress hormone patterns naturally. This isn't optional, it's biochemically necessary for cortisol management. Movement matters, but the type of exercise is key. Moderate physical activity like walking, swimming, or yoga can lower cortisol, but intense exercise when you're already chronically stressed can actually increase cortisol further. The balance depends on your current stress state. Movement should reduce stress, not add to it. Mindfulness practices have measurable effects on cortisol. Research from Harvard and UCSF shows that meditation, deep breathing exercises, and even simple journaling can lower cortisol levels within weeks. A study by Dr. Jennifer Daubenminer and Dr. Elissa Epel found that overweight women who practiced mindfulness techniques for stress eating showed reductions in abdominal fat associated with improvements in stress levels and cortisol awakening response. Social connection acts as a buffer against stress. Chronic loneliness and isolation raise cortisol levels. Time spent with people you trust, even just having meaningful conversations, can help control your stress response. This isn't just psychological comfort, it has measurable hormonal effects. Blood sugar stability influences cortisol throughout the day. When your blood sugar spikes and crashes, your body releases cortisol as part of the stress response. Eating balanced meals with adequate protein, fiber, and healthy fats keeps your blood sugar more stable, which in turn helps keep cortisol from spiking unnecessarily. These aren't quick fixes. They work by addressing the root cause, chronic cortisol elevation. When you implement these consistently over weeks and months, you're giving your body a chance to recalibrate its stress response system. Your belly fat isn't random. It's not just extra weight sitting on your body. Visceral fat is metabolically active tissue with a high concentration of stress hormone receptors. When cortisol stays elevated for extended periods, your visceral fat cells are biologically designed to respond more aggressively than fat anywhere else on your body. This is why stress goes straight to your belly, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your biology is doing exactly what it evolved to do, except it's responding to chronic stress instead of short-term survival threats. If you've been under significant stress and you've noticed changes in your waistline, now you understand the mechanism. You also understand that managing stress isn't just about feeling better emotionally, it's about changing the hormonal signals that control where your body stores fat. Your health is worth protecting, and understanding how your body actually works gives you power to make changes that matter. If this video helped you understand your body better, I need your help spreading this information. Hit the like button so more people can discover this. Comment below and let me know. Has stress affected your belly fat? Have you noticed the connection between stressful periods in your life and changes in your waistline? And if you think this information could help someone you care about, a friend dealing with stress, a family member struggling with belly fat, a coworker who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Your body deserves to be understood, and this information could be exactly what someone needs to finally make sense of what they've been experiencing. I'll see you in the next one.